There's lots of contenders for Neil Young's greatest album. Rust Never Sleeps, On the Beach, Tonight's the Night, everybody knows this is nowhere. But there is another one that every time I come back to it, it takes me back to the first time I ever heard it, which was back in 1999, after I had just started listening to Neil Young. The first album I heard was Harvest, and that made me a fan. The next ones I heard were Mirrorball, Sleeps with Angels, Zuma, and Ragged Glory, and they made me into an obsessive fan. But then there was another one. I bought it on second-hand vinyl from Selector Disc, Rust in Peace, in Nottingham. Basically, as soon as I heard the opening song, I went beyond being an obsessive fan onto whatever the next level is beyond that, where Neil Young's music is basically one of the major food groups, essential for human survival, bodily and mental well-being, alongside the music of Jimi Hendrix and Bob Dylan. The opening song in question was Tell Me Why, and the album was After the Gold Rush. Released at the end of August 1970, After the Gold Rush has now long been regarded as one of Neil Young's best albums. Stylistically, it mixes all the different elements of Neil Young's music into one cohesive collection, from the solo acoustic folky to country rock to the heavier sound of Crazy Horse, and it does so seemingly so effortlessly and harmoniously that it still stands up over 50 years later. After the Gold Rush is one of those genuinely rare albums where there are no wasted seconds, no weak songs, every performance is outstanding, an album that seems to get better and better each time you come back to it, even years or decades later. So why is that? Why is it a great album rather than just a good one? I'm going to go deep into the album, the songs, the recording, the people involved, and even the concept behind it, because yep, actually this started off as a concept album. Recorded between August 1969 and June 1970, Neil Young actually made most of this album at his house in Topanga Canyon, Los Angeles, California. But the story of this album does not actually start in Topanga Canyon. In fact, it doesn't even start in America. The story of this album actually starts far away, deep in the jungles of Peru. After the huge success of the countercultural movie phenomenon that was Easy Rider, director Dennis Hopper was basically handed $1 million to go ahead and make whatever film he wanted. He chose to make a movie set in South America, starring himself as a disenfranchised stuntman making a western in Peru. The plot gets even more meta in the film. The Peruvian natives start making their own western movies with pretend cameras made out of sticks, but with killing each other for real. It's a great movie, by the way. Amongst those appearing in this film, Dean Stockwell. Yes, that Dean Stockwell from Quantum Leap and Blue Velvet. Dean Stockwell had been a working actor since he was a child, literally, with many roles in the mainstream of Hollywood movies and TV. But then around the mid-60s he dropped out and tuned into the new hippie subculture in Topanga Canyon, making lots of new friends, including fellow thespian Russ Tamblyn, who was also in this movie, and Neil Young. After having his doors of perception thoroughly widened, he came back to acting in 1968, and by January 1970 he found himself in Chinchero, Peru, with Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda making The Last Movie, as it was called. Now, if you give Dennis Hopper in 1970 $1 million, get him together with his friends, put them all in South America, where all forms of, let's say, chemical entertainment that were illegal in the US were available to purchase over the counter without a prescription, then you're going to get some serious scenes. And one of these scenes was Dennis Hopper and Dean Stockwell talking back and forth in breaks in filming, coming up with a new idea for a film, a movie in which the plot would centre around the end of the world, a great earthquake, a giant wave swallowing California, a tsunami sweeping up Topanga Canyon, taking all the hippies with it. Dennis Hopper, still riding high, no pun intended, on the success of Easy Rider, encouraged Stockwell to go ahead and write the script, and Hopper said he would use his newfound clout in Hollywood to help him get the film made. So after Dean Stockwell was finished shooting his scenes for The Last Movie, he went back to Topanga and co-wrote the screenplay with a writing partner, Herb Berman, who had actually co-written the songs on Captain Beefheart's debut album, Safe as Milk. Great album. One day, Dean Stockwell went round to Neil Young's house in Topanga and showed him the finished screenplay, which was called After the Gold Rush. and he wanted Neil to do the soundtrack. Neil read the screenplay and was totally on board, agreed to do it. He said some songs he'd already written would fit in perfectly with the story, but then he also went ahead and wrote a whole bunch of new songs as well to go with the movie, including the title song After the Gold Rush. Neil Young said in his autobiography Waging Heavy Peace, the song After the Gold Rush was written to go along with the story's main character as he carried the tree of life through Topanga Canyon to the ocean. One day, Dean brought an executive from Universal Studios to my house to meet me. It looked like the project was going to happen, and I thought it would be a really good movie. It was a little off the wall and not your normal type of Hollywood story, but I was really into it. Dean Stockwell said I was writing a movie that was personal, a Jungian self-discovery of the gnosis. It involved the Kabbalah. It involved a lot of arcane stuff. Sadly, the Universal Pictures executives, after Stockwell told them this and given them a tour of Topanga Canyon, introduced them to a lot of the people he wanted to use in the film, like Janis Joplin, were not quite as gassed about the commercial potential of the movie, and they passed on it. And the screenplay never got filmed. And now no copies of the script exist anywhere in the world, as far as we know, which is a total bummer. Young said, I think had it been made, it would stand as a contemporary to Easy Rider, and it would have had a similar effect. The script itself was full of imagery, very unique. He says, I really wish that movie had been made, because it could have really defined an important moment in the culture. Inspired by the screenplay, and undeterred by the fact that the movie would likely never be made, Young set about recording his new songs anyway. He already had 2 songs in the bag. In August 1969, between Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young rehearsals for their tour, Neil Young was in Sunset Sound with Crazy Horse, and they recorded Oh Lonesome Me and I Believe in You. And then in March of 1970, Young started recording the rest of his new songs at his home in Topanga Canyon. This was to be his first album recorded outside of a normal commercial studio setting, and it is the first of his albums to contain nothing but live vocals on every song. That is, vocals recorded live as they played the song, not overdubbed on later, as was the norm and still is now. Although a lot less prevalent back then, it was still expected that you would record an instrumental version of a song and then come back and dub the vocals on later. On After the Gold Rush, Young starts not doing that for every song. So to record the album at home, Young decided to turn his basement into a recording studio, and he enlisted friends to help him properly soundproof the room with huge sheets of lead, which are not easy to carry up the incredibly steep hill where Neil Young's house was. The musicians he used on the record were a deliberate mixture of Crazy Horse and CSNY, Ralph Molina on drums, Greg Reeves from CSNY on bass, Danny Whitten featured on most of these songs on vocals as well, singing harmonies. But there was one other musician who was new to Young's circle who would make a huge contribution to this album, an 18-year-old hotshot guitarist named Nils Lofgren. Lofgren had his own band called Grin, and in 1969, then just 17, Lofgren had gone to see Neil Young performing at the Cellar Door in Washington DC, and had managed to get backstage to meet Young before the gig. Trying to get the elder musician to give him some advice on how to break into the music biz, Young handed Lofgren his Martin guitar and told him to play him some of his songs. Lofgren performed what would later become the entire first Grin album. A few days later, Lofgren got a call at home from Neil Young. His mum answered the phone and passed it to him. Young told him he had spoken to Ahmet Ertegun, and I think I can get you a deal at Atlantic Records. This blew Lofgren's mind and started a relationship with Neil Young that has lasted until the present day. David Briggs was manning the desk for all the sessions, no matter if they were at Neil Young's Topanga home or Sunset Sound. The first songs that they recorded were Oh Lonesome Me and I Believe in You in August of 1969 at Sunset Sound in Hollywood, and then came the March sessions at Neil Young's house, which he had dubbed Redwood Studio. On the 12th of March, they recorded Tell Me Why and After the Gold Rush, the song. 3 days later, they recorded Only Love Can Break Your Heart. On the 17th of March, they recorded Don't Let It Bring You Down and Cripple Creek Ferry. 2 days later, they recorded Southern Man and Till the Morning Comes. And then 6th of April, they recorded When You Dance I Can Really Love. The final song, Birds, was actually recorded at Sound City in Hollywood on the 30th of June 1970. So yeah, let's go through each song on the album. The first song, side 1, track 1, is Tell Me Why. Tell me lies later, come and see me, I'll be around for a while. Did used to think that it must have been Crosby, Stills and Nash that were backing him on the vocals on this song, but it's not. It's Ralph Molina and Nils Lofgren. Nils Lofgren actually plays the second guitar on the song as well. Lyrically, the first verse is saying he's loved, he's been hurt, he's alone, He's scared, but he's still searching. And the tone of the music is, to me, optimistic and sunny, though the words are tinged with a bit of darkness. The broken harbours, the dark horse alone, frightened. The chorus of Tell Me Why features the memorable question, is it hard to make arrangements with yourself when you're old enough to repay but young enough to sell? And Young later said in a 1988 interview, he says, that's a hell of a question, isn't it? I don't understand it. Sounds like gibberish to me. I stopped singing that song because when I get to that line, I go, what the fuck am I talking about? Well, I think it means it's hard to reconcile conflicting emotions within yourself when you're mature enough to be wise, but you're still youthful enough to override that and go with an irrational emotion instead. And he frames it as a debt for which you need to make arrangements to repay, or just sell it on. Old enough to invest your love in someone, but young enough to take the money and move on to someone else. He's wise enough to recognise lies, but young enough to put up with them just to be with someone. After all, he'll be around for a while. The whole song seems to be about this conflict between the wariness of maturity and the recklessness of youth coexisting, which makes sense when you're 24 years old, as Neil Young was when he recorded the album. So, sorry Neil, I disagree. I understand the lyrics, and I think they have meaning. Next up is one of my favourite songs that not only mentions medieval knights, spaceships and getting high, it also features a flugelhorn solo. Well, I dreamed I saw the knights in armour come singing something about a queen. There were peasants singing. After the Gold Rush has 3 verses, each one set in a different time on planet Earth. The first verse is set in sort of medieval times, the second one is the present day, and the third one is a possible future. When Dolly Parton, Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt were recording their version of the song for their 1999 album Trio 2, Dolly Parton said that they actually called Neil Young on the phone and asked him what the song meant. He said, I've no idea. But in his 2012 memoir, Waging Heavy Peace, Young did give something of an explanation. Aside from being directly inspired by Dean Stockwell's screenplay, he thinks of it as being an environmental song. I recognise in it now this thread that goes through a lot of my songs. It's this time travel thing. When I look out the window, the first thing that comes to my mind is the way this place looked 100 years ago. In 1992, he said the song was about 3 times in history: a Robin Hood scene, a fire scene in the present and the future. The air is yellow and red, ships are leaving, certain people can go, certain people can't. I think it's going to happen. One of the best things about this song is the imagery and how it mirrors the clearness and directness of the overall sound of the rest of the album. My favourite line is, the archer splits the tree, an incredibly clear and concise turn of phrase that instantly conjures a vivid image. Randy Newman is a huge fan of this song, especially the line, thinking about what a friend had said, I was hoping that it was a lie. He said, that's great. He doesn't tell you what the friend said. You don't know what it is. It has nothing to do with anything, but I like it. And despite the song specifying the time in which it was written, the 1970s, the song only seems to get more timeless as it gets older. Environmental concerns seem more relevant now than then. And the idea of going out to space and seeding the universe with human life is popular again, especially with people like Elon Musk, for example. So let's hope we don't turn the Earth into a burned out basement before we get to that stage. Track number 3, Only Love Can Break Your Heart. When you were young and on your own, how did it feel to be alone? This is such a good example of how great a songwriter Neil Young is. Only great songwriters can take such a simple structure and melody with such basic chords and summon up a song so much greater than the sum of its parts that its impact can still be felt decades later. The song was an unlikely dance hit in the UK in 1990 for Saint Etienne and has been covered by many other artists as well. The song was written about Graham Nash's breakup with Joni Mitchell. It starts with a question. Remember how it felt to be alone when you were younger, when love was the dream, but then you grow up and the dream breaks your heart? This takes us back to Tell Me Why, the conflict between youth and experience. It's a paradox. The one thing you need the most can hurt you the most as well. The song is unadorned by any extra flourishes that were considered unnecessary. No guitar solo, no harmonica. It reminds me of some of the best songs by Paul McCartney, where it's just really simple, straightforward. The first thing that he thought of, he made the song around that, and that's what makes it a great song. For this next song, things take a different turn. He's getting back in his DeLorean and he's going time travelling again. The song wears its politics on the sleeves of Neil's puffy white shirt. For those that think this song is a bit too on the nose when it comes to its analysis of racial division in America, I'd have to agree somewhat, but it doesn't stop it from being a powerful and heartfelt musical experience. When he was asked if he was preaching in Southern Man, he said no, he was warning. He also said that there was some anger that was channeled into this song when he was recording it. He said that his wife at the time, Susan, was angry at him while he was working on this song in the studio at home, and she was literally throwing things out the door. He said he couldn't remember what they were fighting about, but he said it was probably my fault. He said the song was sort of about the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King, of course, had just been assassinated 2 years earlier. He said the song was really about the white man rather than Southern man, but he stopped playing it around the early 70s. He said it's a strange song, I don't sing it anymore. He believed it was no longer relevant. Leonard Skinner's Sweet Home Alabama probably sealed the deal for Neil in 74. I hope Neil Young will remember, a Southern man, don't need him around anyhow. Neil Young and Leonard Skinner didn't actually hate each other. By 75, Neil Young sung the praises of Sweet Home Alabama. In an interview he said, I can't do songs like Southern Man, I'd rather play the Leonard Skinner song, that'd be great. Skinner's Ronnie Van Zant, in fact, was a huge Neil Young fan, wearing a Tonight's the Night t-shirt on the cover of the Street Survivors album. After Van Zant and other members of the band were tragically killed in a plane crash in 1977, Young played a medley of Alabama and Sweet Home Alabama in concert in Miami. It's said that Van Zant was even buried in his Tonight's the Night t-shirt. Look past the less than subtle lyrics. Musically, Southern Man is fantastic. You've got Nils Lofgren, one of the best guitarists in the world, playing the piano, an instrument he only had a rudimentary knowledge of. The groove of the song is so good, Neil decides just one verse is enough before they go into double time and start jamming, and we're all the happier for it. Neil goes full Zen mode in the solo. Nils holds that groove on the piano, the only thing he knew how to play, the only thing he needed to know how to play. And you've got Greg Reeves unleashing his inner James Jamerson on the bass, offering a more complex polyrhythmical underpinning that contrasts really nicely with the simpler, steady groove of Ralph Molina and Young's repeating staccato improvised phrases on the guitar. And then up next you've got 1 minute and 17 seconds of pure unfettered joy with Till the Morning Comes. I'm gonna give you till the morning comes, till the morning comes, till the morning comes. I'm only waiting till the morning. To call it simple would be an understatement, but you'd also be doing it a disservice, like calling a ray of sunshine or a blue sky simple. It's beautiful, it shines briefly, and then it's gone. The contrast after the intensity of Southern Man makes it all the more effective. And then you've got side 2, so let's just pick up the needle, turn it over, blow a bit of the fluff off the needle. So with the start of side 2, you've got the next song, Oh Lonesome Me. Everybody's going out and having fun. I'm a fool for staying home and having none. We go to a different place again. This is the only song on the album not written by Neil Young. This was in fact a hit country song from December 1957, written and performed by Don Gibson, produced by Chet Atkins and featuring the Jordanaires on backing vocals. It was Gibson's only top 10 hit in the pop charts. The original was slick, jaunty country. Young transformed into a slow, mournful ballad with wailing harmonica. The lines of the song are slowed down. Young wrings the emotion out of every every word, until you believe that he really is as desperate as the song makes out. The band all pull together, all as one. Even the kick drum in the breaks between the verses sound dramatic. And the middle eight, a nice melodic diversion in the original, here turns into a breakdown, the drums dropping out for a moment, before building back to a dramatic, dynamic climax in the middle of the song, with Danny Whitten and Young harmonising before they take it back to the verse to conclude the song. Stunning. In the next track, Don't Let It Bring You Down.
Old man lying by the side of the road with the lorries rolling by. Blue moon sinking from the weight of the load and the buildings scrape the sky.
Nils Lofgren is on the piano again for this one, and in fact the recording date of this song was 2 days before Southern Man, so actually this was the first song that he played piano on at the recording sessions. A great lesson in minimalism. There's no harmony singing, just Neil. Greg Reeves' bass playing, again, it's busy, but it's not out of kilter with the song, and despite all those extra notes, he still somehow leaves a huge amount of room for the other musicians. There was a shitload of room on those songs, said Young, because there was nothing else going on. Guitar, bass, piano, drums, that's all there was. The song was it. The song spoke. Everything else was supporting the song. Despite, on the face of it, the upbeat title of the song, the down-tuned guitar riff that runs throughout the song creates an almost doom-laden atmosphere as Young sings about blue moons sinking, cold wind, dead men, blind men, and burning castles. It's a litany of depressive scenes presented vividly in very spare language, whilst the chorus attempts to reassure us to not worry. However, I wouldn't recommend trying to quell someone's anxiety by telling them, don't worry, it's only a castle on fire. But seriously, there is something about age in these songs that Young keeps returning to, as in the previous songs like Tell Me Why and Only Love Can Break Your Heart. Here, the wisdom that comes with age is simply knowledge of mortality. Like in the Hendrix song, Castles Made of Sand, we all melt into the sea eventually. Even the strongest man-made buildings are laid waste by the passage of time, but Young reaffirms the cyclical nature of life. Find someone who's turning and you will come around. Then there's the blind man running through the light of the night, the light he can't see in the darkness. The answer in his hand is the white cane, but as this white cane is then found lying in the gutter and the sirens are moaning, this implies to me maybe the blind man didn't make it either. Either that or he abandoned his cane because he made it to the river of sight. Either way, don't let it bring you down. The next song, Birds.
Lover, there will be another one who'll hover over you beneath the sun. Tomorrow, see the things that never come today.
Birds was the last song recorded for the album, the end of June 1970, in a different studio, Sound City in Hollywood. Now, he had already recorded this song at those August 69 sessions with Crazy Horse, but he chose to record an even more stripped down version here, just piano with Danny Whitten and Ralph Molina providing backing vocals. This to me is the song that's most obviously about Young's relationship with his wife, Susan, which was coming to an end during the making of this album. Young has other songs like this where he uses bird imagery, especially feathers, expecting to fly. There you were, stood on the edge of your feather. Little wing leaves them feathers when they fall are good examples. Danger bird is another. Here he's expecting to fly again, this time away from his lover. Again he offers reassurance, but it's unambiguous. It's over. Here I have to mention a book published in 2003 in the 33 and a third series, written by Sam Inglis, that is all about the album Harvest, but the author talks about other Neil Young albums as well. And on page 53 of this book, he refers to this song as a dirge that suffers from being too simple. Now that may be the worst take I've ever read on a Neil Young song. The runners-up being some of the other comments he made in that book about other Neil Young songs. So Sam Inglis, you're wrong. Musically and lyrically, Birds is not a dirge. It's not a celebration either, but it's looking up to the sky and seeing the sun rise again. It's far too brief to be a dirge. It is in fact musical and lyrical economy of the highest order. The simple setting ensures the song itself is the centre of attention. Neil Young himself said all the arrangements on this album 100% in service of the song.
It's over.
and then the next song, When You Dance, I Can Really Love. The second to last song to be recorded for the album, this was the only time Jack Nietzsche played in the studio with Crazy Horse. In fact, this take of the song was literally the only one he played on. So he was responsible for the wild piano part that runs throughout this song. Young reportedly had to cajole him to play on this song, as he was very resistant to the idea, and this song was also the last ever time the original Crazy Horse played with Danny Whitten in the studio. Musically, the song is cut from the same D modal cloth as Cinnamon Girl, using the same tuning, it's in the same key, but it expands the palette of chords used. It switches between major and minor keys as well. The droning of the D note is also something that's a feature of the song, like it is in Cinnamon Girl, and it goes into a repeated riff at the end of the song that echoes the concept of the trance in the lyrics. In later live versions, this end of the song would turn into an extended jam that allowed the horse to take off into space. The version found on 1997's Year of the Horse live album is particularly great. Lyrically, the song is so simple, it almost seems clumsy. When you dance, I can really love, on paper, is a phrase no one would actually say to a girl, but just like on the rest of the album, there's some sort of mysterious alchemy at work here, which elevates it. Alchemy is a good word for this album, actually, as the idea of alchemy was the attempt to turn base elements into gold. And here Young is somehow creating gold with the most basic musical elements. After the gold rush is over, Young is in his burned out basement, still conjuring up the nuggets. The next song, I Believe in You.
Now that you made yourself love me, do you think I can change it in a day? How can I...
Recorded back in August '69 with Crazy Horse at Sunset Sound, it's another one-off magical moment of alchemy, captured live in the studio by David Briggs. Lyrically and musically, this is simply one of the greatest moments in Neil Young's work. It's important to point out as well that this is Neil Young and Crazy Horse. People usually think that Young and the Horse are incapable of softer moments like this, that their music only consists of big, loud, primitive, heavy proto-grunge, which is certainly a big element of their work, but they've always had this side to them too, from the very first album right up until the present day. Sleeps with Angels is a great example of an album that almost solely consists of this side of them. Acoustic guitars, beautiful harmonies, even vibes, with Young laying down one of the most personal, heartfelt and intriguing lyrics about a relationship coming to an end. Just because you believe in somebody doesn't mean that you're going to stay with them. I Believe in You is one of the songs that most documents the end of Young's relationship with his wife, Susan. Young wrote in the liner notes to his 1977 compilation album Decade, I think this gets to the heart of the matter, and like Danny Whitten once said, I don't want to talk about it. One of the hallmarks of a truly great song is an opening line that grabs hold of your attention in ways that you couldn't even imagine before. The first line here is, now that you've found yourself losing your mind, are you here again? This is a line that eerily captures the feeling like we've somehow been eavesdropping on a private conversation between the two estranged lovers. In fact, the whole song is like that. Young lays bare all his fear and doubt. Am I lying to you when I say I believe in you? A brutal question, actually. And then musically at the same time, they soar in the chorus as he repeats that phrase, whilst Danny Whitten and Ralph Molina harmonise in the background. It's incredible stuff, and rarely has a subject matter so filled with doubt, doom and paralysis sounded so joyous at the same time. And then Cripple Creek Ferry is awaiting us at the end of the album to sail us off into the sunset.
Hey, hey, Cripple Creek Ferry, running through the overhanging trees. Make way for the Cripple Creek Ferry. The water's going down, it's a mighty tide. Squeeze.
And just like at the end of side 1 with Till the Morning Comes, this song provides some light relief after the intensity of the previous song. Just a chorus and a verse is all we need to get through those overhanging trees. Again, the imagery here is so specific, so precise. It paints a vivid picture even in such a short space of time. The gambler tips his hat, the captain hates to lose. It's a mighty tight squeeze, but somehow we get the feeling that we're going to make it. The water's going down. So are we headed to the same Cripple Creek that the band sang about? The origins of the original bluegrass song Cripple Creek are unknown. It could refer to either the Cripple Creek in Colorado, where a mining town was formed after gold was discovered there in 1891, or it could refer to the Cripple Creek in Virginia. Both Robbie Robertson and Neil Young, both from Canada, incidentally, chose to evoke the American mythology behind this Appalachian tune with Crippled Creek as the desired destination. And they did this roughly around the same time. Grail Marcus, in his book Mystery Train, says, in American folklore, Cripple Creek is like the Big Rock Candy Mountain, a place where all fears vanish beyond memory. The gold rush is over, but still the searcher must ride his dark horse to find his new home in the sun. Just as the album was being released, Young was moving from Topanga Canyon, starting a new life at his Broken Arrow Ranch in Half Moon Bay, Northern California, without his wife. In 69 and 70, Young's career had blown up. He had become part of the biggest supergroup of the late 60s, CSNY. He'd released 3 solo records, the Deja Vu album, which was a massive hit. He had 2 tours with Crazy Horse, 3 tours with CSNY. It was enough to push any relationship to breaking point, and that's what happened. It didn't survive, it broke. So beyond the initial concept behind the album, as a soundtrack to Dean Stockwell's unmade movie, After the Gold Rush had evolved into an elegy for Young's marriage. Young considered the distinctive cover art a blurry, solarized black and white photo where he's walking down a street in Greenwich Village whilst an old woman passes the opposite direction, as symbolic of the end of his and his wife's relationship. The photo on the back cover of the album showed a close-up of, Young's arse, clad in those famous patchwork jeans that he used to wear around this time. Those patches on those jeans were sewn on by his wife, Susan, and she even used strands of her own hair as the thread. To pay tribute to that, in spite of their marriage ending, he chose to show that work that she'd done for all to see, close up. He said in his autobiography, Waging Heavy Peace, Susan, my first wife, made all those cool patches I wore back in the day when even I was fashionable. After we broke up, I wanted to keep it carefully tucked away forever. It was beautiful. I wanted to always remember her by it. Upon its release, the album was not universally praised as a masterpiece. Decidedly mixed reviews appeared in Rolling Stone and elsewhere. Neil Young devotees will probably spend the next few weeks trying desperately to convince themselves that After the Gold Rush is good music, but they'll be kidding themselves. None of the songs here rise above the uniformly dull surface. That review was published in October of 1970, and weirdly, doesn't that sound similar to a lot of the reviews that Neil Young receives for his recent work? Just my opinion, but I've got a feeling a lot of Young's later work as well will undergo a similar reappraisal. The Village Voice critic Robert Christgau was more enthusiastic, saying, Young's melodies, every one of them, are impossible to dismiss. He can write poetic lyrics without falling flat on his metaphor, even when the subject is ecology or crumbling empire. And despite his acoustic tenor, he rocks plenty, a real rarity. Critical estimation of the album has only increased with time. By 1975, Rolling Stone was referring to the album as a masterpiece. Gold Rush is now considered a classic album. Young's manager, Elliot Roberts, was in no doubt of what After the Gold Rush had achieved. Gold Rush really did make the turn for us. It was a softer record, much more writerly. It propelled Neil into that writer class alongside Leonard Cohen, James Taylor and Joni Mitchell. It now appears on all those lists of the greatest albums ever made, albums you need to hear before you die. But don't take their word for it. Go ahead and listen to the album, or re-listen to it, and discover the alchemy for yourself. This has been another Bernard Fakey presentation for Rust for Glory Neil Young Tribute Band, and I want to thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this special presentation, please hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and we really appreciate the support. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.